All right, all right. We are back at the podcast studio. We are in Belmar today. We have a special guest with us. Someone who traveled from Florida to come see us. We have Michael Shapiro from TAPinto. How are you today, Michael?
I'm great, Tom. Thanks so much for having me.
You got it. The timing worked out on this one, huh? We put it on the calendar in February, and here we are in June.
Yeah, fantastic. It's great to be here.
Excellent. So, I wanted to, get you, when we started talking about the podcast, I thought you'd be a great guest with all your expansion that you have going on, and you've taken a local, hyper-local concept to 99 communities, mostly in New Jersey and into a couple other states.
Yeah. I started TAPinto in New Providence, New Jersey in 2008. I wanted to create an all-online, objective local news site. And what caused me to do it was when my son was 1. He's now 17 and he's fine. But when he was 1, we found out he needed open heart surgery. And that's what caused me to start it, because at the time, I was an attorney in New York, and I was commuting back and forth, and I was never home.
Sure.
And so I wanted to do something where I could see my wife and son, do something I'd really like to do, and I could help the community at the same time.
You didn't think you could become a lawyer in New Jersey?
Well, unfortunately, New Jersey firms don't pay as well.
That's fair.
Yeah.
There you go. I love your honesty. So now you decide, instead of working a 40-hour-a-week job, you're going to hustle and become an entrepreneur and launch a news site.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was working in the city, between billing crazy hours and commuting like 3 hours a day, I was never home. And
Sure.
So I started this local news site, and within a few weeks, people in Berkeley Heights and Summit, our 2 neighboring towns, reached out to me and said, "Hey, we heard about this. Can you start it in our town?" And I did. And then I left my job in New York to do it full time.
So now you had 3.
3,
You have
yeah.
Berkeley Heights, New Providence, and you have...
And Summit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you have 3, and what is that, Union County? Or?
Yeah, Union County.
All right, so now you have 3 in Union County, and then what happens?
Yeah, and so my original idea was just to grow those 3 sites, their revenue, their traffic, their content. And over a period of time, we built them to profitability. I was able to bring on a full-time editor, a reporter, et cetera. But I started to get more and more requests from people to expand to their town. And I had to say no, because I couldn't do more local news sites myself. And so eventually I came up with this idea in 2012, 2013 of, in effect, franchising local news. And
Had that been done before?
No, and it hasn't been done since.
No, you had the patch at some point come around. That was probably, 2005, 2006 that the patch initially came around. And they were backed by AOL, which is kind of funny, AOL,
Yeah.
But they were backed by AOL, and they were starting to put people in all these. But that was a corporate-owned model.
Yeah, and they actually launched 6 months after I started in New Providence.
Okay,
And
perfect.
so when they launched, we didn't know they were owned by AOL. And they proceeded to launch 1,200 sites all across the country, spend like $300 million. Then Verizon.
They had it at the time.
Yeah, and like they got acquired by Verizon, and then in 2013 or so, the same time period we started to franchise, they laid off 90% of all their folks. And so, like in New Jersey, at their heyday, they had about 125 employees for their 87 sites. They went down to like 7 or 8,
Wow.
which is basically what they have today. And so in their heyday, they did a lot of original local news reporting. They had in-person salespeople. They did a really good job. After the layoffs, it became a lot of aggregated content, publishing press releases as news stories, got rid of all the in-person sales and things like that. So they're kind of a shell of their former self. They still have 1,200 sites across the country. But in some communities, they are still fully staffed, and they do a great job there. But in most of their communities, they have virtually no staffing.
Wow. Okay. Who are they still owned by Verizon?
Yeah, well, they're owned now half by Verizon and half by a BC company called Hale Global.
Oh, I thought was Apollo ever part? Were they ever part of Apollo's?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's weird that if a VC company has them, that they don't. Not investing in them.
Yeah, well, they did put money into
Yep.
them, but they kind of. I mean, I can't speak for them, but my guess is that it was hemorrhaging money.
Yeah, the
when they
return
acquired
wasn't.
it.
Yeah, the return wasn't
And
there.
so they just wanted to kind of turn it to profitability.
Fair. So now you're seeing the opposite, because now you're seeing, again, not through a corporate model, but through a franchise model. You're individually franchising towns within areas and running profitable news centers.
Yeah. So at this point, we have about 99 franchised TAPinto sites.
Why couldn't we get to 100 for this?
This year we're going to get there, but Not for the show.
I would have
this
liked for
year.
the podcast that we would have had on.
That would have been awesome.
All right, well.
But and they cover more than 125 municipalities because we leave it to the franchisee to determine their territory.
Okay.
And like for example, if towns share the same school system or they share a lot of services, it makes sense to put towns together as one site. And so so that's why we have over 99 sites, but they're from more than 125 municipalities.
That's great. Yep.
Almost all of them are in New Jersey, but we do have 3 in Florida, 2 in New York, 1 in Pennsylvania. And key to
Where
our
in New York?
There's one in Westchester County, and there's one up in Olean, New York. It's actually, that one's pretty cool. It's both of them pretty cool. The one in Olean is St. Bonaventure University franchises
Sure.
a journalism practicum for the students, which I think you're aware of.
Yep.
And then the other one is a family-owned print newspaper that is using us as their online platform.
That's great. Cool. And now, how are you guys doing news with the firewalls, with the paywalls?
Yeah, so since day one, we've never had a paywall. We don't have a membership wall. We believe that people, regardless of their socioeconomic background, should be able to know what's going on in their town. They shouldn't have to decide between paying for medicine and knowing what the town council is doing.
Yep.
So all of our TAPinto sites are free to read. They're free to get the newsletter, which people can just go and sign up for.
And how often does the newsletter go out?
There's a daily newsletter that goes out every day, and there's a weekend newsletter that goes out on Sunday, and you can also get breaking news alerts. And then we also, about a month ago, we launched an app, which is also free to download. So our revenue is 100% advertising based, but it's diversified between things like banner advertising, content marketing, social media marketing, email marketing, newsletter marketing, and so knock on wood, but last year 97% of our franchisees were profitable. The only 2 that weren't were in their first year.
Okay. So. And what's the normal ROI return on capital for?
Yeah, I mean, typically our franchisees are profitable sometime between month 3 and month 6.
It's great.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different ways you can go about doing it. A lot of our sites, it's 2 people who do it together part-time. One does the content, one does the sales side. About 20% of our sites, it's 1 person, and they do both the content and the sales side. Then it's more like full-time. We also have people who just buy the franchise, and then they bring on people to do both the content and the sales side. A nonprofit can even franchise in their community and do it. And like we talked about the university model with St. Bonaventure University doing it. Every site has to do at least 1 original local news story a day. And they have to be objective, and they have to follow the Society of Professional Journalists ethics. We don't have an editorial page, so we don't tell people how to vote or what to think, which I think is really what people want these days. They want to just know what's going on in their town. They don't want to be told how to vote or what to think, and I think that that's really what people are looking for these days.
Awesome. So, and where do you see the local news world going forward? Like, you have a lot of news out there. You have a lot of, people that are very divided, as a country. So, kind of how do you see yourselves? Where do you see yourselves fitting into this?
Yeah, I mean, tragically, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of print newspapers that are going out of business that have not transitioned to a digital presence.
Can you help them?
Yeah, we can now. If you asked me that question 6 months ago, no. But now we can, because now what we've been able to do is we've been able to take our technology and now we're able to provide it to print newspapers, magazine publishers, radio stations, one-off local news sites, so they can be on our platform. They can 100% keep their own branding. And then all the back office services that we provide to our franchisees, they can take a la carte as they want them or need them. This came about because over the last year and a half, I've talked to a lot of publishers who said to me, hey, look, we love what you're doing. We'd love to have your platform and the revenue streams, et cetera. But one, we want to keep our own branding 100%. So we don't want TAPinto involved at all.
It's fair.
And yeah. And second is the back office services you provide are fantastic, but there are a lot of them that we don't need because we already do it ourselves, and we don't want to pay for things that we don't need. So now we've been able to create this truly awesome collaborative network of publishers because they're all on the same platform. So they can seamlessly share content with each other. They can sell advertising into each other, yet 100% keep their own branding, and yet have all the technology that our franchisees have. To me, it's like the ultimate solution to the news crisis, because on the for news deserts, where there are no local newspapers, no local news sites, then TAPinto is the solution, where we find people who want to start a local news site in their community. But in the hundreds, if not thousands, of communities where there's a print newspaper, a radio station doing local news, or a magazine doing local news, or a one-off hyper-local news site that either don't have a good online site or don't have an online site, they can now become part of our platform and take advantage of not only all the technology we provide, but the content sharing and the selling of advertising back and forth to lift everybody's boats together.
Now, how is that? Is that working with the advertising model with going into other publications and?
Yeah, so like we can't under our license agreement, we can't franchise to someone who wants to start a publication in a town that's franchised.
Sure.
Right? So there's no conflict there. But like, for example, with Commerce Magazine, so Commerce Magazine is our first licensee. It's a statewide business magazine in New Jersey. It's been around for over 50 years. Before us, their online site basically consisted of a PDF. Now they have a fully digital website. And
Are they loving it?
Yeah, they in fact, we're going to be, we just filmed, but it's going to come out in a couple weeks. But Steve Adubato show on PBS, Tony Russo, who's the executive director of Commerce Magazine, and me, we were on the show together talking about the model and everything. But now Commerce Magazine can share their statewide business stories with the local TAPinto franchisees that don't cover statewide business news.
That's
right?
a lot of content.
Yeah. Secondly, if a local franchisee covers, for example, a business grand opening, now Commerce Magazine can run that in their magazine. And then more importantly is on the advertising side. So now Commerce Magazine can go to all of their B2B businesses that already market with them, and those that have a B2C component, they can now sell them advertising into TAPinto local news sites. And conversely, TAPinto local news sites that have B2C, obviously, advertisers. Some of them are B2B, and now they can sell them into Commerce Magazine. So it's a win-win for everybody involved.
That's great. That's awesome. So, quick break from the episode. Our sponsor for this episode is Worldwide Title, serving the New Jersey area and more. Christina, Debbie, and team are the best. To check them out, visit myworldwidetitle.com. And how long have they been on board?
They launched end of January.
So you have a couple months of history, and it's so far so good with everybody getting along and playing nice in the sandbox.
Yeah, and we just in the last 2 weeks, we've now branded the license platform, which is called the Hyperlocal News Network. We launched a website for it called hyperlocalnewsnetwork.com, and has totally different branding than TAPinto. But we're really excited about that, and to me, I think these two solutions combined is really a really good solution for the local news crisis.
Yeah. And now, how do you get new franchisees? So from a grip perspective, when you look at your business, you're out there trying to get new franchises. You also have to produce quality news as well as get advertisers. Because if you don't have advertisers, you're not going to support the model. You're not going to support the model. You're going, these places are going to fold. You have, but then you have to keep growing the base.
Yeah, so I spend about 10 to 15% of my time working on regional advertising to drive more revenue to the franchisees. I spend a good 50% of my time directly dealing with all of our franchisees on the sales side. I'm still their go-to person on the sales side. So if they have sales questions, if they want me to look at a sales proposal, you're
the guy.
I still do all the sales training.
Do you sell it, or you let them sell it?
They sell it to their local businesses,
sure.
Right?
But you prep them and you get them to the dance.
Correct, because I always say to them, look, when I started TAPinto, I had no journalism experience, I had no sales experience. So if I can do it, you can do it, and that's proven to be true.
It's a fair way to look at it.
Yeah, because the business owner is always going to be the person that's most passionate about the business.
Sure.
And so innately, they're typically going to be the best salesperson for their business as well. Which tends to work out pretty well. And then so I spend about 50% of my time doing that, and then I spend now about 10% of my time on the Hyperlocal News Network, the license platform, and then all the rest of my time I'm spending on meeting with prospective franchisees, going to networking events, doing podcasts, things that to raise the brand and raise the profile, going to conferences. This year I went to the Local Media Consortium Conference out in Arizona, which is like some of the biggest publishers in the country. I went to the Night Media Forum in Miami in February, and that was like 900 media publishers from across the country all in one place. We're actually going to be at the Online News Association in Atlanta in September, and the Hyperlocal News Network was actually just chosen for their Startup Alley at ONA, which is pretty cool because they're going to feature the Hyperlocal News Network as a new business model for publishers.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and so I'll be there kind of hawking it.
Who came up with that idea, the Hyperlocal News Network? Was that like your brainchild?
Yeah, and it came from these conversations I had with these publishers, and also me seeing the landscape because, there are about 1,200 hyperlocal news sites throughout the country outside of TAPinto.
Oh, wow.
Out of the 1,200, only about 30% of them are in the black. And why is that? It's because they don't have the training, they don't have the back office services, they don't have the network, they don't have the collaboration. That's why they're not successful.
And when you say the back office network, just for the listeners, kind of expand into what you're providing on that back office.
Yeah, so both for the franchisees and the licensees, they both receive our full platform, our content management system, our newsletter capability. We send the newsletters for them. We train them in all aspects of the business. We have 5 full-time developers. They're primarily there to put out new features, but they're also there to fix bugs if there's a bug that they have. And we have 3 full-time customer service specialists for any other kinds of questions they might have. So that's both for the franchisees and the licensees. Our back office services for the franchisees are all included. For the licensees are a la carte. So those back office services include media liability insurance. We do their billing, their credit card processing, and their advertisers.
Cool.
We provide HubSpot as a customer relation management system. We provide DocuSign for contracts. For the franchisees, it's automatically included, but if a licensee wants their own custom app, we can do an app for them. Full direct access to our director of content for any content questions. If they want the director of content to look at a story before it goes live, if they want to brainstorm story ideas, I'm available.
Are you the director of content, or that's somebody else?
That's somebody else.
Right,
yeah, cool. We have a full-time director of content. He used to be the executive producer at News 12 in New Jersey.
Yeah, sure.
And then similarly, I'm available.
Local as local news gets.
Exactly. And then I'm available, obviously, on the sales side to look at sales proposals if they want to brainstorm before they go in to see a client, et cetera. So for franchisees, that's included. For a licensee, that's an a la carte service. We have several others, but those are the main ones.
And if somebody's interested that's watching this podcast, how do they get involved? Like, how do they become a franchisee?
Yeah, so on the franchising side, they would go to starttap.net. That's our franchising website. There we have, they can sign up for an informational webinar. We do a webinar every month. They can also get on my calendar if they want to meet with me one-on-one and talk about it. If they decide that they potentially want to move forward, we would then send them an application. They fill out the application and they meet with our prospective franchisee committee composed of franchisees. Those franchisees recommend to me whether they should get approved to franchise. If they're approved to franchise, and by the way, the committee only recommends less than 50% of the people that apply to franchise. If they are recommended to franchise, then I make the ultimate decision whether to grant the franchise. And then they receive the franchise agreement. They have to have the franchise agreement in their hands at least 14 days before they're able to sign it. And then once they sign it, we can start training. And then we can have them up and running as quickly or unquickly as they want to be up and running. On the licensing side, it works differently because they're under their own brand. So while they do have to follow the Society of Professional Journalists ethics and they have to be objective, they don't have a story a day requirement because in some cases it's a radio station or it's a magazine or whatever. Sure. Second is that the approval process is very different. They would reach out to me. I would talk with them. I would work through with them to make sure there's no conflicts with any existing publishers. And then they would get a license agreement, which they can then sign. And then once they sign it, we can get their site up and running and get them trained and get them up and running that way. So the licensing side of things is kind of a little bit of a quicker process. And there's advantages and disadvantages to both, really. But if you're looking to start a local news site, then the TAPinto franchise model makes the most sense. Whereas if you already have a publication and you just want the digital platform, then the licensing model makes the most sense.
Sure. And so 99, and what's the goal?
Well, I mean, I want to continue to scale this. I want to scale it outside of New Jersey, and help fill this, help fill the news desert. And there's 10,000 towns in the country that have no local newspaper, no local news site, and then there's several thousand towns that have a local newspaper that doesn't have a good digital presence. So on the franchising side, there's thousands of places that we could be.
Yep.
And even on the licensing side, there's thousands of print, newspapers and other kinds of publications that we can be helping. Even niche publications where, I talked to a publisher the other day where they have a publication for a specific ethnic community, and they have a lot of problems with their technology and stuff.
Sure.
And they're like, wait, you could take care of this for us, and we don't have to deal with it, and we don't have to keep paying all this money for it and whatever. Correct. We can take care of that for them.
Wingman's not hosting their site.
No.
Good. All right. That would be bad news. All right, cool. So, so how many franchisees are you bringing on a year?
I mean, in a typical year, it's typically 5 to 10 new franchisees a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think eventually what will wind up happening is that we're not in the market for it, but I think eventually, like, a strategic partner will reach out to us and say, hey, we heard about this, and we want to help scale you across the country. And I think that will happen. And I think it's more of a matter, obviously, they would have to, fit with our values that we hold dear, and make sure that, it is going to be about original local news reporting, and it's not going to become some crazy website and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But I think that's a scenario down the road. I don't think it's near term, but I think long term. I think that's likely what'll happen because, like we won this year first place from the local media association in innovation for our DIY marketing platform, which is part of the website for both the franchisees and the licensees. But as those things kind of start to happen, where we win national awards, then we start to get more attention and things like that.
Sure. Awesome. I love it. So let people, as we wrap up today, this was a great conversation. I'm glad you came. I'm glad you flew in from Florida just for this.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Let the guests know where they can find you online, on your social, and just so that if anybody wants to get in touch with you about either advertising or potentially becoming a franchisee, they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on the franchising side, it's starttap.net. On the licensing side, it's hyperlocalnewsnetwork.com. They can reach out to me directly, and they can find me on LinkedIn at Michael Shapiro. Also, they can email me at mshapiro@tapinto.net. I would love to hear from anyone, even just commenting on the podcast or people's thoughts about local news or anything like that. I would love to hear from people, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. I'm glad you came in, and I'll be talking to you soon.
Sounds
Keep
good,
up
Tom.
the great work.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. It's great to see you.
Nice to see you.